We often think that the greatest evils in history must come from pure madness. But what if that's not the case? What if they came from a mind that was chillingly sane? Today, we're going to go beyond the history books. We're going to do something like a psychological autopsy, trying to get inside the head of one of history's most destructive figures.
So, here's how we'll tackle this. First, we'll dive right into that central question. Was he mad or was he bad? Then, we'll look at the actual diagnosis and trace it back to his early life. After that, we'll see how his personal psychology exploded onto the world stage as policy. We'll end up in the bunker for his final days, and then, most importantly, we'll talk about what we can learn from all of this today.
Okay, let's kick things off with a question that's been debated for decades. It really gets to the heart of how we even begin to understand this kind of evil. So, was he clinically insane? Detached from reality? Or was he something much scarier? A totally sane person who was in complete control and fully aware of what he was doing? This whole mad versus bad thing isn't just an academic debate. It's really the key to unlocking everything else. All right, now let's put on our psychologist hats. Obviously, we can't literally analyze him, but you might be surprised to learn that there's a really strong consensus based on a mountain of evidence that points to one specific and very disturbing diagnosis. The term that keeps coming up again and again is malignant narcissism. Now, we're not talking about your typical selfie-obsessed vanity here. This is a clinical term for a catastrophic collision of personality traits that, when they all come together in one person, can lead to almost unimaginable harm. Let's break this down into 4 T parts. Think of it like 4 toxic ingredients. First, the narcissism. This was a messianic, godlike complex. He truly believed he was Germany's savior. Second, paranoia, a worldview just steeped in conspiracy theories and suspicion. Third, antisocial traits. Basically, a complete lack of empathy. He saw people as pawns, just tools to be used or thrown away. And finally, sadism. He actually seemed to take pleasure in humiliating and hurting people. So where does a personality like that even come from? It doesn't just spring out of nowhere, right? To get it, we really have to go back in time, back to his childhood, and look at the experiences that shaped this dangerous way of thinking. If you look at this timeline, you start to see a clear pattern of what psychologists call narcissistic injuries. These are deep, profound humiliations to the ego. You've got a brutal father, the crushing rejection from art school, years spent in poverty, and then the huge national trauma of losing World War I. Every single one was another blow, building up this massive sense of resentment and victimhood. And here is the crucial psychological twist. He couldn't face his own failures, so instead, he used a defense mechanism called projection. He basically took all of his own shame, all his feelings of being a failure, and just hurled them onto other people, onto scapegoats, especially Jewish people. It was like this terrible psychological trick where his personal problems became a political ideology. And this, right here, is where one man's inner demons become a global nightmare. We're about to see how his deeply disturbed mind wasn't just kept inside. Oh no, it was unleashed and translated directly into policies that would set the world on fire. Publicly, he was this charismatic strongman, right? The confident leader. But behind closed doors, people saw something totally different. A guy prone to screaming tantrums, absolutely crippled by paranoia, and just riddled with deep, deep insecurity. It was all a mask. He had to project this image of ultimate strength because inside, he felt profoundly weak. This chart just lays out the horrifying logic of it all. It starts with national humiliation, that narcissistic injury of losing the war. Then comes the scapegoating to explain it away. From there, he proposes an ideological solution, racial purity. And that leads, step by step, to political action. It's a terrifyingly straight line from personal grievance to state-sponsored genocide. His psychology wasn't just part of his politics, it was the whole blueprint. And this quote just nails it. The paranoia wasn't just some personality quirk. It was the engine of his entire political machine. Every decision, every war, every single atrocity was justified through the twisted logic of this one paranoid delusion. So, as his 1,000-year Reich crumbled after just 12 years, his mind crumbled right along with it. In those final chaotic days, trapped in his bunker beneath Berlin, his psychology just completely shattered. As his whole world shrank down to a few concrete rooms, his mind just imploded. The paranoia went into overdrive. His judgment was shot, warped by a daily cocktail of drugs, including meth. He was literally moving around non-existent armies on a map, completely cut off from the reality of his own epic failure. You have to understand, for a malignant narcissist, total defeat is like psychological death. When that grandiose self-image he'd built finally came crashing down, there was no introspection, no remorse. There was just this black hole of pure spite and rage. He wanted to pull the entire world down with him, completely consumed by the very paranoia that had fueled him all along. So, we've taken a journey into a pretty dark place. What's the takeaway? Let's go back to where we started and really look at the unsettling lessons this whole story has for us, right here, right now. So, back to the big question, mad or bad? The consensus is chillingly clear. He wasn't mad in the sense that he had lost his mind. He was, as they say, criminally sane, a calculating, manipulative person who knew exactly what he was doing. And that makes him fully and terribly responsible. And this is why this stuff still matters so much. The warning signs are timeless, aren't they? You see what happens when extreme narcissism gets its hands on absolute power. You see how scapegoating is used to divide people, how paranoia gets dressed up and sold as vigilance. And maybe the scariest lesson of all is how one person's private sickness can become an entire nation's ideology. And all of this leaves us with a huge question, one that's just as relevant today as it was 80 years ago. Understanding the mind of a tyrant isn't just a history lesson, it's a challenge. It forces us to ask ourselves, what are the safeguards? What systems, what kind of courage does it take to protect society when a leader's own mind becomes the biggest threat of all?